Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last live show for Bleak House. It's been a ride this summer. I think a lot of people have had high rides, and I've been on the low, but it's been a ride.
I think I'm a little bit more mid now.
Oh, yeah?
It's a mid ride.
How about you, Christy? Do you still love it as much as you were loving it before?
Yes. I loved it, honestly, the whole way through, even when it was a bit of work at the beginning. I was, like, fully invested. Sandro!
Oh. I know. Don't mind the action in the background.
He'll be so excited for these Thursday Saturdays to be done. He's like so excited for them to be done. I get my mom back.
Yeah, right.
You've been so consistent, Victoria. I'm proud of you. I know that wasn't easy.
I know. It's not always easy with little people.
Yes.
Well, in work, starting.
Yeah. Work's been the worst thing. He's fine. It's work.
Yeah.
It's work that ruins everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, hopefully next summer, when it's mostly in the summer for you, hopefully it'll be better.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I should have more mental space.
Yeah. So I don't remember if we actually talked about this on live last time or not, but we're going to start in June, like June 1st next time. So that way it's a bit easier for Victoria, and it doesn't really matter to me or Christy, I think, when we start. So
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for starting in June.
Absolutely. All right. I will start off by saying it's a 2-star book for me. Didn't really love it.
Wow. 3 stars.
I know, 2 stars.
Christy just like what? She was like, oh.
It's probably like a 7-star for you out of a 5-star scale. But
I get it. It was long.
Yeah, and then the ending, I was just like, seriously? That's how you're going to wrap up this whole story? I was just, no. And then I realized every time I was trying to pick it up, I had to force myself to, which is not the sign of even a 3-star book for me. So I was like, all right, can't get a 3. So.
No, I think that's very valid. If you just don't want to pick up a book, like that's those end up being below 3 stars for me as well. If I just do not want to pick it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're not enjoying it most of the way through for a book that's that long, frankly, it deserves a low rating.
When I was camping a couple weeks ago, I brought it with me, and I was so excited. It was like, oh, I'm finally enjoying it. I can pick it up. And then when I was camping, I'm like, okay, I'll read this now. And I'm like, actually, no, I want to read other stuff. So even when I was enjoying it, I was still picking other stuff over it. So I was just like, this just isn't that great. Yeah, I think the ending was just rushed. I'm like, you had 76 chapters, and you throw all of it in the last 2? So, yeah, that's why it's a 2 for me. But it sounds like Victoria's more in the 3-star range.
I think I'm a 4. I'm a 4. I did get fatigued in this book. I think I do feel the length, and I think with Charles Dickens' longer works, I feel that way at some point often, but I think I felt it more in Bleak House at certain points, just feeling like a little bit like you, Naomi, like I like needing to pick it up but not necessarily wanting to all the time. But it depended on like what part of the book I was in also and what chapters. I really enjoyed, like, Esther's chapters were my favorite. I didn't always love the omniscient narrator chapters, but it depended. Like, some of them I loved and I thought were beautifully written. And then some of them I was like, I do not want to be with these characters right now. I do not know who they are. Like, who are these people? And I also, at the same time, I can appreciate what, like the vast world that he created and all the characters. Like I can appreciate Dickens, but I don't always love the experience of reading Dickens, and so that makes me in this like weird middle feeling, you know.
Yeah.
But
No, I get it.
but yeah, I like the ending, how things wrap up, and I like that some of our characters get happy endings, and yeah. Lou agrees with me. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I could feel that the whole time. That was for me though. But you got a lot of 4-star people here, so
Yeah,
Ooh,
I'm happy I read it, and I think it was certainly a worthwhile kind of bucket list read. I think it's masterful. It's just the experience of reading it, I think, was sometimes like, let's go on to the plot. Rather than it was just, he's long-winded a lot of the time, and I know that about Dickens, and I just feel it.
Yeah.
But I want to hear Christy's thoughts.
Well, you guys kind of know I enjoyed it all the way through. Honestly, the bucket chapters were my favorite. I just thought they flew. So, but other than that, I thought the omniscient ones were my favorite. And yeah, I definitely felt like fatigued at times, but I just had enough space in my life where when I was feeling fatigued, I could switch to something else for a little while. And then there would be days where I would just read huge swaths of Bleak House because it would get to a period where I was really enjoying it. And that would make up for the days where I was just like not in the mood to read it. So I think I really needed as much space as we gave it. You know, I needed like almost, was it full 3 months?
Yeah. Well, we had 10 weeks.
10 weeks. Okay. I needed every single one of those 10 weeks to get through it. Although actually I did finish it in August, so maybe I needed 9 weeks. But
yeah. I finished it in August as well, and it put me in like a book slump. Like I genuinely did not pick up anything, and I still haven't. And I'm like, this is not cool. Dickens does this to me. I don't want to read a Dickens for Victober. So
Oh,
I don't know. I think it'll be better for Victober because I'm picking. I'm actually having my TBR come out, I think, today. So I'm not going to say what I'm reading. But
okay. I was about to ask, but I won't ask.
Yes,
it's coming up very soon. But yeah, was just like, wow, it really put me in like a book hangover, a book slump. I never really get those, and this is one that put me in that part.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Naomi.
It's all good.
You put me in the mood for Victober, like super much. I'm gonna play. There's a book that's about Dickens London. It's like a nonfiction book that I'm like, I want to read this.
Oh yes. I'm glad that you really loved it and Victoria was in the middle and then I'm in the end. So that it actually gave us a variety of opinions throughout the whole 10 weeks.
It did. I don't know anybody else who maybe gave it as high of a rating as I did, though. I have a couple friends who really loved it. Alana Estelle really loved it. And there was somebody else who also really loved it. But most people, they seem to be in the 4 range or like really didn't like it.
Yep. I did read some summaries and I genuinely forgot people that were in the book. I was like, who was that?
Oh yeah, me too all the time.
I reread the summaries or like the whole book summary and I'm like, wait, when did that happen? Like I forgot a lot. So this is clearly not one of my most memorable reads. Yep. So what did everyone else think? We have a lot of 4 stars and the taxing.
A lot of 4s.
I'm glad everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, 4 is good.
Definitely. But I agree with this statement by Paul. It was too long. I think you could have cut pages from it.
And like 10 characters.
Or 10 families even.
Yes.
Yeah. So what about the ending? Did we like the ending? Did we like how it's wrapped up? Any problems with it or
I was
parts of it?
disappointed that Lady Deadlock died, honestly. I didn't really like how that particular storyline wrapped up. I just felt like that was
She dies quite early in the end as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's the only thing that I really had bad feelings about.
Yeah, I didn't like how John Dice was like, "Oh, I really wanted to marry you, but I realized that, you really love this person, so I'm going to give you." And I'm like, "You really loved her when she was like 12?" That's like,
Well, that's what.
Ugh.
and
that's
I'm like,
what
I know
made
I'm
me-
looking from a modern lens, but I
Yeah.
was just like, no. He's so noble and heroic, and I was just like, I didn't see it that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was never a marriage of love though. Like it was always a marriage of security for Esther. And so like that made sense to me with John Jarndyce's character to be like I realize that you are in love with someone and I am not a jerk and I will let you go marry them. And I actually liked that.
Well, I liked that aspect of it, but not him being like the whole, "Oh, I've always wanted to marry you." But I was like, you knew her when she was a kid.
Yeah, there's that. The age difference problems.
Yeah. Reading between the seams, liked how George took care of Sir Leicester. Yeah, George was a good character. I liked him, actually. He was quite interesting.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites too, George.
Yeah.
And the family that he loved. What was the family? The wife and the husband. The husband who always gave the wife who was always telling everybody the mind of the husband.
Yeah, there are a few of those kind of families. Yeah. I thought it was interesting how your predictions turned out pretty on point, Christy. You had a lot of accurate predictions.
I think once Victoria mentioned that she thought she paired Esther with the surgeon, I was like, it all came together for me.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just a reoccurring star of the show.
I'm sorry for the distraction, but he's like,
we don't mind.
he's just walking. He's trying to walk all over the place, and he's like, "Mom, what are you doing?" So he's just gonna be back there.
It's all good. Yeah. I did think it's always interesting how I feel like there's a lot of single parents that Dickens always leaves behind. At least the ones I've read. There seems to be quite a few single parents that he always leaves. So Ada just became another one of those single parents, but she didn't have the hardships that, most of Dickens' characters do.
Single parents and orphans.
Yes.
Yeah, it had, I think Bleak House had like the typical, I guess a little bit stereotypical Dickens characters who are like tragic, and the poor being tragic and dying of cold and like just dying of the elements. And he really did care about like England and London and the poverty and the classes. Like he obviously had a big heart for that and noticed. So I feel like his characters that live in poverty will die a tragic death.
Yep.
Yep.
And and going back to Lady Deadlock as well, like I agree with you, Christy. I wish, like, it's a very I guess it's a realistic ending for her as like sort of becoming a pariah of society. But I wanted better. I wanted better for her, but that is
And for
sort of
her
the crux
husband.
of the book as well.
I feel like that ending would have been too happy in Dickens' world. Like he can't just give everybody a happy ending.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Lady Deadlock, her death was important in the plot. Like it is sort of the what's the word? I used to know things like this.
I would call it the crux of the book or the climax. I don't know what.
Climax. Yeah, there you go. It's like I used to know words. Yeah, like her death is sort of the climax, and then everything after is the falling action and resolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was definitely interesting how her husband was ready to forgive her and she couldn't go back. Like that wasn't allowed in the storyline. But
It seemed like society was not going to let her. They weren't going to leave her alone
yeah, unfortunately.
for her crimes against humanity.
I guess she wouldn't have just been happy with her husband who loved her. I don't know.
Yeah.
She couldn't handle her pride being destroyed.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Louis wanted to smack Mrs. Jellyby.
Yeah, she is an enraging character.
Yes.
Rage.
Yeah.
Just so oblivious to the things right in front of her.
And how her project just like sort of didn't turn out. After all that, it was just like, isn't that so the way?
Yeah.
It was totally a useless exercise, all of the work she put into it.
Yeah. She was a character, to say the least. Yeah. Reading this between the seams, was surprised when Skimpole died. Yeah, he seemed to be just like, I don't know, the clown of the book. Kind of seemed like that to me. I don't know. Maybe there's a better way to describe him, but yeah.
I mean, when you first meet him, you don't necessarily, I don't know, I just didn't realize that we were going to be seeing so much of him. And it was annoying every time he popped up. I was just like, I don't like this guy. Why are we talking about him again?
I didn't like him either, but the character I really ended up hating was Mr. Guppy. Like, at the beginning, I didn't hate him because I was just like, oh, he's just one of those bumbling fools. And then it became, oh no, this guy's really mean. Like, can you stop antagonizing Lady Deadlock? And can you stop antagonizing Esther all the time? He became, I feel like, one of the villains of the book.
Well, I
start that way, at least.
I can never figure out, like, Guppy's scenes were also sometimes very comical.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of comedy in this book, but often like Guppy might be involved in a few of those instances. Like some of the funniest parts of the book for me was like him looking up at Esther at the opera being like, she won't marry me, and
yeah,
and then also like when he was like afraid that Esther would try to be like, well, you said you proposed to me, but then she has the scars on her face, and he's like, so you remember that we didn't do that, right? Like, you remember, right? Just so you know, like, I need it in writing, like, we're not gonna get married.
Yes.
I just found a lot of his scenes to just be funny.
Yeah, it's funny. I felt like he wasn't very kind. Like, I think this is a very accurate, at least that's how I read him, as like just someone who wanted to be, but then also just had other motives. I don't know.
He had like a few redeeming moments towards the end, but mostly just he didn't have much character. So
yeah.
He was a tool. Like so many of the characters.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Any other favorite characters or least favorite characters from the whole story?
I found Hortense to be a fun character to read for a while, even though she's a villain. But I enjoy, like, I feel like whenever Hortense was in a scene, it was interesting, and she was like, there was like some manipulation going on, or some emotions, like intense emotions happening. But she's not in much of the book though.
No, I felt like that. I mean, maybe this is part of the reason why I didn't like it so much, but for her to be the villain of the book, if you want to call her the villainess or the top villain because she's the murderer, but for her to be that, it was like the motive is so thin and you don't see enough of her to actually believe it, at least in my opinion. So
you don't see her very much.
So when it came out of nowhere, like, why is she the person? I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I know, Naomi, that you are a widely read mystery reader, and I know Dickens was probably
I know.
not.
It was
Dickens
not a
an
mystery.
experienced mystery writer.
And I acknowledge that, but I can't change my enjoyment level, so it's still getting a 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do notice that for sure.
I found Dickens's attempts at writing a mystery to be fascinating because I'd not read a Dickens mystery before, and I just thought it was interesting to see him try. But I can't say that it was like always very effective.
That's very true.
It was effective for me. I don't read a lot of mysteries, so it was enough for me. I was like interested the whole way through because I was really curious how all of them would end. But I could see how maybe as an experienced mystery reader, Naomi, yeah, Hortense being the villain, yeah, that was maybe a little bit of a stretch, you know.
There's a series by Alexander McCall Smith, which is the Sunday Philosophy Club, I think, and it's a mystery series, but really it's a literary series that has a little mysterious element. So when I read it, the second one, I was like, oh wow, that's great. And the first one I read like after the second one, I'm like, what in the world did I just read? This is not a mystery, but it categorizes because it's not the same kind of mystery, and that's kind of what Dickens was like. He's kind of a low key mystery.
Yeah.
But not really.
So cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Richard, we have some opinions about Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of same.
I agree that I was never really attached to Richard as a character. Like, I was more worried about Ada, and I was like, he's gonna ruin Ada's life.
Yes.
So, like, Richard was sort of on this like downward spiral that you could see coming. It was always foreshadowed. Every scene as you saw him, he would look worse and worse.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of obvious what was going to happen with Richard. But yeah, I never really cared about him. I cared about Ada.
I think when he was introduced, I think if I had known he was going to die, at least in that introduction couple scenes or couple chapters, I would have been sad. Because at that time I liked him. But then as it went on and he continued to, like, when he got worse and started to become more lazy and started to show that he was just after the money and that, oh, I'm going to do it. I have tons of debts, but I'm going to do it. I'll be okay. And then he tied Ada into this whole mess. Then I did not feel sad. I felt sad for Ada that she was suddenly left with probably a bunch of debt and a baby on the way. And like, what can she do about that? But I didn't feel sorry at that point. I would have felt sorry in the early parts if I had known at that point. But there was definitely a development that was, yeah.
And Christy, I think you predicted the pregnancy. I remember you go to comment about like, oh, I hope Ada doesn't get pregnant.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. He was.
Well, apparently we just kept wanting more bodies. So I agree. I did not like Smallweed. He should have died.
Yeah, he's a despicable character.
One thing I would say. Oh, sorry. They were done.
Oh no, I just said he was very unlikable.
Yes. I do have to say, Dickens did give us plenty of bodies. That kept things exciting for me too. There was always somebody dying of something interesting.
He was creative. There are lots of ways to kill people in this book. I will say that.
I still think it's funny that I thought Joe died and then he actually wasn't dead and then he did die later.
We all thought he died.
Yes.
I was like, he died, right? No, he didn't.
We should have assumed that Dickens is so tragic that he had to show us the death as opposed to just being like, Joe ran off when he was really, really sick. We should have assumed that we actually had to see it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't seem to just let things go out of sight, usually. Yeah. He usually will show most things on screen, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I think that's partly why his books are so long. Yeah. He doesn't like just skim over with summary very often. There are a few moments that he does, like after the death of Lady Deadlock, he kind of skims over what happens with Esther immediately after that. And also, sometimes he'll like jump ahead, like when Esther gets sick and then suddenly you find out she's blind for a little while. And then, but then the next chapter you get it filled in, you know, so he would hop around a bit.
It's interesting with the whole Joe thing. Like, he covered so much of the book. Joe was such a prominent character in so many of that, like so many of the mystery elements or the investigation things. And then when I was reading the character list, just to remind myself of characters who I probably didn't even know existed because I forgot them. But Joe's line was literally, he shows Lady Deadlock where Captain Nemo's grave is. That was the entire character description of him. And I was like, seriously? This kid was all over the book. And you're giving him the fact that he showed where the grave is? That's all you're describing him as?
That's very simplified, yes.
Like, wow, yeah, technically, but also a lot more. Yeah, spontaneous combustion was definitely one of the most interesting ones I've read.
I mean, I don't think I've read a Victorian book with spontaneous combustion, but if it's a thing, I would like to read more.
He clearly believed it was a thing.
I wonder if there's other Victorian novels where spontaneous combustion shows up.
That would be interesting to figure out.
There probably is.
I should just give that to the Victober host as being like a prompt. Like, find a book that has spontaneous combustion in it.
That would be a great prompt.
For bingo. Victorian bingo. Spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, that'd be a hard one. But I think that'd be interesting.
I don't know if it's only Bleak House where that happens.
Now I want to look it up and see.
That means everyone would have to read Bleak House for that prompt.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't do that again.
When I was researching nonfiction for reading in October in Victober, there was somewhere it mentioned that Dickens got a lot of his ideas by reading newspapers. And it made me wonder if a newspaper theorized that somebody died of spontaneous combustion. And so he just like plucked that out.
Yeah, that sounds very likely.
Yeah, it does. Some authors, you just know that they have a lot of ideas going on.
Yes.
I enjoy Lou's going down.
Oh, I'm going to go down it too. I'm going to research it later. I'm going to see if there's any other ones.
Oh, I'm so excited. Please share your results.
Because like the Moonstone didn't have that. Although I would have suspected the Moonstone would probably be more along those lines. At least I don't remember it having that one. So
it's worth looking into.
It's gonna be worth looking into.
Yeah, no, that was a fun part of the book. The Mr. Crook's death.
Yes.
It was confusing. I was like, what just happened?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Without the summary, I wouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah. I was like, all I know is like there's like oozing from the ceiling. Like it was very like descriptive of the oozing.
And was it like brain matter that he was touching? Was that right? It was blood.
I don't know.
It was one of the two. It was brain matter or blood. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, it's almost like his evil deeds caught up with him and he blew himself up.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting things in Victorian novels. They're never dull.
Yeah. No. So I feel like the only actual murder was what's his name? The lawyer.
Tulkinghorn?
Yeah, Tulkinghorn.
So
because everyone else, it seemed like they kind of looked like a murder or they kind of looked suspicious, but there was nothing except for Tulkinghorn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's the only one that's like outright murdered, right?
Outright murdered. As opposed to everyone else being side murdered.
That makes me think, who were all the villains in this book? So clearly there was Tulkinghorn. Smallweed.
Hortense.
Hortense. Yes.
I'd say Mr. Guppy to a certain extent, the way he's revealing of information.
Skimpole.
Yep.
Mhm.
They're very different. They're like different flavors of villains.
Yeah.
All very different. I
And
would
the
argue Mrs. Jellyby
Yeah,
Oh,
is
yeah.
a villain in her own realm.
definitely. I think this book is just like full of villains, and they're just different versions of villains. Like, you know, you have the villain who is like your creditor.
Mr. Crook also was a villain.
Yeah.
Too.
You have the blackmailer, you have the like the debtor, you also have the uncaring mother, you have, you know, it's just like so many different kinds of villains in this book.
Yeah, I've never
It's
thought
like
of that.
everyday villains.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, it's
And
a
the
villain you can
courts,
meet any
too.
day on the street kind of thing.
Oh, and the court. How can we forget the court? The court is the villain.
And then it ends with like, and now it's done because everyone's paid out all the money. It's like, yeah, I saw that coming and I was not impressed.
Yeah, that's also like very heavily foreshadowed,
I know.
and like no one is surprised by that because it's like the whole book we've been kind of sort of talking about that. So that was a little bit like anticlimactic how the court stuff wrapped up, and it was just like, well, it's just done and no one has any money. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting. Like, I don't know if I was expecting anything
Oh, the
more interesting to
lawyers.
happen.
The lawyers
lawyers
get the
got
money. The lawyers won it.
Right. So
I was kind of expecting it to be like the whole time. It's like, you know, this is just like ending and no one's going to win and all this. And then it's going to be like, oh, and this person gets like 10 pounds and that's the end of it. Like, that's all that's left out of this entire fortune is like nothing. But I was like expecting it to be nothing. And then I was like, but they're probably just going to be like a little side thing. Be like, oh, here's $10 to Esther suddenly randomly. But then it was like, oh, no, it's just wrapped up. And it's all tied up in a bow and nothing else to talk about.
yeah, my court expectations I think were a little bit higher as far as like I thought we would get more things happening even in the court and like seeing court drama unfold, and we really don't see any of that like inside the court. I think we were inside the court like one time and it was just the characters sort of on the side. So I think this was more like the court case was very like loosely tying the characters together, but I just thought the court drama was going to be more of a part of it for some reason. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah.
But
It's reminded me of it reminded me of a show I've been watching, which I'm kind of a conspiracy theorist. Like, I like to go down that rabbit hole and be like, oh yeah, whatever, nothing. There's a show called History's Greatest Mysteries, which is literally a show about nothing, where nothing ever gets accomplished. Because it's like, how did the pyramids get built and why? And they talk about like 7 different theories. And it's just like, at the end, we don't know. And that's the end of every single episode. We don't know. And it's like, there's no point, but I've been watching it. It's been great. But I felt like that was this book being like, you know, we're starting on this premise. It's about inheritance. And then at the end, it's like, and it doesn't matter. Like, that was how it felt at the end. And it's, yeah, all the characters connected through it. But it was like, but the end, who cares? Like, that was just, what was the premise?
Like, it does feel like that kind of. That's so funny.
It just felt like there was, what was the point?
I feel like he made his point, like, about the courts. It's almost like the whole point of the courts was to just show, like, through Richard, for example, how it ruined his life. Yeah. And, like, yeah, it just, they were always kind of there. They just, there wasn't a lot of dynamic change happening as a result of the courts. You would just see its presence in the lives of the characters. Some of them just completely disregarded the courts, so it didn't affect them, and some of them, like the lawyers, you know, played the courts. Who was Richard's lawyer? He was a villain too.
Oh,
was it Vole? Was that Vole?
Voles, yeah. That's right. Yeah. I forgot about him.
And vole, like a vole, isn't it a type of like?
Yeah, it's an
rodent.
It's an animal.
Like a vole is a kind of rodent. Mm-hmm. Just funny.
Mm-hmm.
The names, like we had talked about many times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know that because I read the book, but at the same time, at the end, it felt like, what was the point? That was my emotion after the book. So I do get this. Don't worry. I didn't miss that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just the court case more loosely tied the characters together and gave us kind of an umbrella, like everyone in the story falls under this overarching thing that's happening. I guess that my expectations were different as far as like court things. But yeah.
I thought it would become a big deal at the end.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping for.
It kind of was like just fizzled out.
I feel like this, like, I know there was a bunch of like mystery elements to it, but I feel like this was more meant with like written with an agenda. And I'm not saying the agenda was bad, but I feel like it was written with the agenda of talking about how the court systems, the lawyers get rich and the people don't make anything, about how the poor are not being helped, how all these different things are happening, or how debtors are continually collecting and the people can never get out of it. All these different agendas, I feel like, were put on the book from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying, like I said, those agendas are bad. I think those are fine agendas to talk about, but it felt really agenda heavy as opposed to plot heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And his readers of the time, like the Bleak House modern readers, I think would have also maybe related to that and picked up on that more because they're living in the society that he's critiquing. So I'm sure that the point was not lost on them.
Yes.
Well, even like a single mother being like blacklisted essentially, like even that agenda, right? Like that's not something that was common then. So yeah.
And I think what makes this also timeless is that we have the same problems in society in different countries and in all countries as far as like corruption and the poor not always being taken care of and certain people having power. It's all themes that didn't go away with the times. Like it's still they're all things that still happen.
Oh yeah. And it's definitely current issues. Like those issues don't go away. But the thing is that I don't know what I'm trying to say. They're current issues and they will never change. Like, these have been problems with people forever. But the fact is that sometimes a modern audience reading a classic book about it can be understandable, but also can be a little more difficult to get it. I don't know how I'm trying to say. I'm sorry. I hope that made sense. But I was pointing.
No, it does. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
A modern book,
Nothing
it would have
changed.
been shorter and more incisive in sharing its point. But our modern books can be just as preachy.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. You can tell when an author picks up the pen or, picks up their computer now to type when they picked it up with the purpose of addressing something.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, and do you ladies think, was he successful in what he addressed?
I thought so.
Yeah. I think it came across very well.
Then he achieved his goal with this book.
Yes.
Do you guys think that the different villains were all like a different expression of the same moral argument to some degree?
Totally.
Yeah, I can see that. I also think it's just like a breakdown of society that he's trying to address too. Like where the flaws are, but you can't fix all the flaws because people are people.
Yeah. He definitely had a very social angle.
Yes.
Pointing out all the flaws. But then certain characters did get a happy ending. So it ended up, there was a little something, I think, for everybody. But for Naomi, it just wasn't enough.
Yeah. I think it was just too long and too many characters. And I will be the first to own that I had an extremely stressful year. And my summer was unbelievably tense. And so my brain probably didn't have enough energy to actually engage and enjoy the material.
I feel you. That always affects me too.
Yeah.
That's when I'm reading something, especially if I'm trying to read something that's like kind of intense.
Yeah. Well,
Great
I had an
literature.
everyday villain working with me for a little while. And so it was just, it's when you have that, you don't want to read about these people who are taking advantage or abusing power or whatever. And I can't go into more detail really, but that was like, you know, you don't want to read that. Like,
Oh yeah, no, I feel you. You weren't in the
fun.
mood for that.
No, it's not fun.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah.
If your patience is already stressed by IRL villains, you don't need this in your life at the moment.
Yes.
IRL villains.
True.
That's funny.
So is there any other things before I was thinking we should announce our next book. We'll figure out the breakdown of it, but we've kind of been talking about the potential and no one said anything different. So we're just going to go with it. Unless anyone else, anything else to talk about with Bleak House? Well, maybe we'll go there. And if you have anything, we can go back to it. So we'll be reading The Tale of Genji. And I wrote down the author's name so I would not forget how to pronounce it. So Shikibu Murasaki or Murasaki Shikibu. I think that's how it was pronounced. So we're going to be reading that one. It's a big one, but we're going to have fun with it. I found a copy on Project Gutenberg. And it like has a bunch of downloadable copies. So you can get a copy for free if you can't find another one. And then there's some on Audible for like the actual audiobook, the full audiobook. But yeah, I think it'll be good. I'm excited. I don't know much about it, but I'm excited.
I like that we're reading a female, and I like that we're reading also not from like European or America. Like I'm excited for it. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think it'll be really cool because it's translated. It was written in like year 1000, so it's really old, and it's like one of the first novels I think of its time. So it's gonna be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
Yes.
Andy says 4 stars. I think that would be Bleak House, unless you've already read Tale of Genji. Or Tale
I think
of
she means Bleak House.
I think so. Yeah, we have a lot of 4 stars. I'm really glad. Even though I didn't love it, I'm glad it was overall a success.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Christy, is it your favorite classic of the year?
Oh, wow.
Or maybe you don't know yet.
I don't know yet. Yeah, because I just read Travels with Charlie too, and I loved that.
Oh yeah, you made me want to read that. That sounds good.
So good.
All your quotes that you shared from Travels with Charlie sound really good.
Oh, yes. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is definitely one of my favorite books of the year, though. It's definitely on that list.
Yeah, this is on my list to get rid of because I'm not going to keep it around. But I'm really glad. Was it 5 stars for you, or like what's your scale rating then? Do you do like 5 or 10 or?
I usually will do percentages.
Okay.
So, which are pretty similar to stars, but it just gives me a little more wiggle room. So, I would say I would probably give this a 90%.
Nice.
Yes. Nice.
Just a little bit too long.
Yeah, it was a lot of pages.
Yeah. But for some reason, I was really vibing it.
Yeah, I think Dickens hits certain people a great way, and then certain people struggle with his work. So I think I'm one of those strugglers.
I've never liked a Dickens novel this much before. I think I liked A Tale of Two Cities only because of the ending. The ending was like so many tears. Everything else I've read from him was like, it's fine. But this one I loved, so I don't know.
I think I want to read Great Expectations as my next Dickens.
That was a good one.
I feel like that one is that was shorter. It's shorter, right? I feel like I've heard a lot of people enjoy Great Expectations.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot, and it is a good amount shorter.
Cool. that is probably my next Dickens someday. I don't know if I'm going to pick it up for Victober or not, but I might need a Dickens.
Potentials are there.
Yeah, I might need a little Dickens breather.
Yeah. I was really tempted to pick up Hard Times during Victober because it's short. I forget. Somebody said something about it that made me be like, I want to read Hard Times. But I already have a lot of Victober plans. I just filmed my TBR as well, Naomi.
I can guarantee you our lists are going to be very different. I'll say it this way. I have 2 books on my official Victober TBR. I'm not going to burn out this year.
Yeah, I usually don't actually. I probably only will have like 1 or 2 for Victober too, because I can't. I'm kind of like you, Naomi. I don't want to just read that one thing for a month. I do the same thing with Jane Austen July and all that. Like I will like dip into it, but it won't be my whole TBR.
In K-Trovathon.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, one is a Dickens and one is a really short book, so it should be fine.
You're reading another Dickens?
Yes, unfortunately.
What? Really?
But I want to get it off my shelves if I don't like it. That's my main objective, to be quite honest.
I'm dying to know, when does this video come out?
Today. I just need to finish editing my description.
Oh, today! Yay! We don't have to wait very long. Okay, good.
No. Okay. But yes. Oh, Victober plans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I agree with with Great Expectations, because it is a lot of references. Like, there's a lot of things in there.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those pop culture things that people don't read, but they know about ideas.
Oh, I don't even know what references. I mean, because I haven't read it, but I didn't realize that there were a lot of pop culture references to Great Expectations.
Yeah. Like, there's not a million, but there is enough that you'll be like, oh, wait, that sounds somewhat familiar.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. That makes me excited to read it, too.
Yeah. Well, I guess we also have an adaptation information. So Gillian Anderson's in the adaptation.
Is that for Bleak House?
Or Tale of Genji? Probably Bleak House.
I do want to watch. Someone recommended the BBC Bleak House adaptation. I want to watch it.
Was it on Prime, like rentable?
I haven't looked into it.
I have Prime this month,
so
I need to check.
I think they probably have it on BritBox. I think BritBox is like a member, so you can have Prime, and then they'll advertise BritBox.
Mm-hmm. That may have been it.
I know BritBox has like all the Agatha Christie's and has tons of all the Jane Austens, because it's all like the BBC stuff. So.
Okay, I need to get Brit. I feel like there's so much on BritBox that I really want to watch. I need to just get it.
I want to watch Why Didn't They Ask Evans, which is an Agatha Christie adaptation, and it's on BritBox. So I need to get the BritBox first.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, the same actress is in both. That's cool.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, now you have some watching to do.
Yes. I know. I think it might help. It might help me like tie Bleak House together in my mind, like to watch the adaptation and to like be like, okay, that's who that is and that's what happens there.
Yeah. Yeah, my cousin had BritBox, so I knew about BritBox, and apparently it's very good. Oh, yes, I need to watch all the adaptations. So this is not Bleak House related, but I have not watched many adaptations of Agatha Christie because I don't want to ruin the ending before I read the book. So now that I'm like 3 books away from finishing all of her mysteries, I can happily go and watch them without having any spoilers.
Are you going to see the new one?
No.
No?
Okay. I was thinking about it, and then I saw the commercial, which is full-on horror with seances and ghosts popping up in the background. Like when you're looking in the mirror, like Poirot's looking in the mirror, and then there's like a creepy ghost behind him, like full body. He turns around and nothing's there. I'm like, yeah, I'm a horror like wimp. The commercial freaks me out. I'm not going to watch the movie. So
I know. I was like, why did they take it this direction?
It's like, have you read Halloween Party? Clearly not. I was with my parents in the theater, and I leaned over to them after the commercial. I'm like, everything you saw was not in the book. Nothing that was there was in the book. So, anyways,
Well, I'm gonna see it. I'll let you guys know if it's full on horror.
it looked it, but if not, I'll like to know. All right. Yeah, I agree. Halloween Party is not one of her best, but it's very different than what they were portraying in the trailer. So, okay. So we wrap it up for the summer. Can't believe we're all done.
I know.
Yay, we did it!
Yay, good job.
It's exciting. So are we
Wow,
all putting down Dickens for at least a couple weeks?
You have a little bit of a break.
Yeah. Well, I probably have stuff to do, and I'm sure Victoria needs to get back.
Yeah, there's always stuff to do.
Yes. But thank you for reading with us. And next summer, please join us for our next read along because it's going to be fun.
Yes.
I'm sure whatever happens, we'll all have a great time discussing it.
Yes.
Yes, thank you everybody for reading along with us. It was super fun, and the comments were always very insightful and always helpful.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the best part for me, keeping to schedule. We finish books this way, so we'll have a great time. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys next year for that, or well, obviously between the time, but next year already.